So it's that said, I'd like to introduce Mr. Julian Lewis, who hails a regional director out in San Diego. He's built this big organization around the country. He's one of the greatest trainers and teaching people. Without further ado, can we give a warm welcome to the great, the one and only regional director from San Diego, California, the great Mr. Julian Lewis.
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're at. And I'm really excited to be here. Before I get started, I just want to give it back to Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas and I go way back. He's been able to be a mentor. I remember the first time I met him, I was brand new in the business, and I had to fight to be a part of this leadership training that was only a select few in a penthouse, unit 2302. At the top of the Omni Hotel, above the Omni Hotel, was a condominium complex called the Metropolitan, and it overlooked the San Diego Bay before they built the Bayfront Hilton, and it also overlooked the entire Padres Stadium. And so I met him, and he did a specific training on what to do and to have success. He didn't even talk about the actual business. He said what to do to have success in the business is you need to have a daily method operation. And so we went over that, and that really helped me to shape my business because of how busy I was outside of ACN. Ironically, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Mr. Thomas, I thank you for everything you've done as a friend, as a mentor, and even the advice and talking about my daughter as a fellow girl dad as well. So thank you so much, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you, Mr. Thomas is on site and he's got his camera on. So if you could, I would love to see your faces as well. Rose, I haven't seen you in forever. I'd love to see your face. Jackie, Brian, you're my boy. I'd love to see you too. Anybody, we're going to just have a simple face-to-face conversation. And for me, I don't care where you're at. You might have a bonnet on. You might want to take that off. But other than that, I just love to see your face. If you have a bald head, you good. So Daryl, I see you good to go over there, brother. Brent, I appreciate you, my man. It's good to see you. All right, so let's get this thing started. T, hey, it's good to see you. Before ACN, I was a senior systems engineer. I was working roughly 80 to 90 hours a week. I was averaging 50 to 60 flights a year. It put me in a situation where I really didn't have a lot of time for myself or my family. And that was a problem for me. And I was open to other opportunities. I didn't know what they looked like, but I was open to something that was going to possibly give me more control over my situation. My daughter was going to be born, and I didn't see myself as the type of father that was only there financially and not physically. And so at that point, I wasn't just open-minded. I had courage instilled in me. I was brave enough to do something different, to step out of my comfort zone. And that something different came by way of ACN. And although I was working that many hours and I was traveling all across the country, I realized that if I was going to change something in my life, I was going to have to apply more effort, and things were going to get a little crazy temporarily so that I could really shift where I was going. And don't we already all know this? You might have been in a career before and you realize, I don't really like this career. And then maybe you decided to go to night school, right? And the whole purpose of night school or going to college online is to add something that's going to make things crazy temporarily. But the reason behind adding it is so that you can shift out of where you don't want to be into something where you possibly want to be. Can we all agree this is true? And so ACN provided that for me in 6 short months with help from mentors like Mr. Al Thomas and my first personal mentor, Mr. Nakota Bragg. I was able to do some phenomenal things in the company. I was able to go get on stage, start running laps on stage, become a President's Club member consistently 4 quarters straight, back to back, every year as a team coordinator, top producing team coordinator, which is now RC, regional director, promoted 3 regional directors in my organization, did a lot of things, but it wasn't all me. The first thing that really helped for someone as busy as me was gaining control over my schedule. And so I want to talk about that right now, because a lot of people try to do ACN when we call the cracks and crevices of our schedule, but that becomes overwhelming if you're extremely busy, and then you're exhausted. By the time you get to a crack in your schedule, you forget that it's there, and all of a sudden it's 3 hours past and you didn't do what you were supposed to do. I took ACN seriously and I carved out time. When in the very beginning of my business, carving out time meant that I was sitting in my car during lunch, eating like a grocery store sandwich so that I could get something really quick. And I was making phone calls for that 45 minutes. I had an hour lunch, but I say 45 minutes because I needed to drive to a quiet street, make the calls, and then get back to wherever I was. And because I was traveling, I'd pick a quiet street. So I had to plan all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, where am I? Where's a quiet street close to the site that I'm going to be at? And let me get my sandwich or whatever I'm going to eat for lunch prepped so that I could make phone calls for the entire time I'm at lunch. I hear people say, well, I work all day. No, you have a break. You have lunch. You have a 15-minute break. And even on my 15-minute breaks, I would do a quick 2 phone calls to somebody so that I could do a 3-way call with my mentor. And I did so many 3-way calls with Nakota. Back then, I shared this with all of you last week, that I could actually do 3-way calls for my team and sound like Nakota because he was always traveling and busy. And they would have thought they talked to Nakota, and when they met him in person in San Diego, they'd say, it was great talking to you on the phone. And then he'd look at me and he'd smile, and then we would sit down and do the presentation. What I realized is that my mentor was also busy, so I needed to figure out ways to support my business, growing through a busy mentor and my busy self. You know what most people do? They make excuses. And what I found is when you get used to making excuses, it becomes a part of a behavioral pattern that blocks you from success. But when you get used to solving problems, that becomes a behavioral pattern that continues your winning process. And so you got to ask yourself right now, and I want you to be honest with yourself. You don't have to put it in the chat and you don't have to tell me, but be honest with yourself. When someone presents something new to you, do you immediately go to why it won't work? Or do you immediately go to how can I figure this out? And be honest, because if you immediately go to why it won't work, I promise you that is one of the main reasons why you're not succeeding in life. Forget ACN. It's why you're not where you want to be right now. See, I went from a person who would give you reasons as to why it won't work. That's why I know what I'm talking about. To being a person to figuring out how can it work, because I needed to get home to my daughter, and she was a baby, so she couldn't figure this out on her own. And so I transitioned, and as I transitioned to figuring things out, all of a sudden my brain, my behavioral patterns went from when I heard something new, how can I make this work in my situation versus why this can't work because of my situation. Does that make sense to all of you? And sometimes we don't know it. And that's why I'm asking you to really think about when people present new information, do you immediately go to why it can't work? I mean, really think about it. Because if that's the type of person you are, we need to break that pattern now so that you can start to generate results. Here's how it looks in the future. So fast forward a decade later, not only do I figure things out, I get excited about challenges. See, my friends and my business partners know that is strange about me. A lot of times when people see challenges, what they do is they get frustrated. Oh my gosh, another challenge is what they say. Why does this always happen to who? To me. When can I catch a what? a break. And these are the thought patterns of someone who is looking at the negative versus seeing how they can figure things out. And that is reiterated in something that we call hypnotic rhythm, if you've read the book Outwitting the Devil. And so people become hard casted in narratives that they don't see as narratives, they see it as reality. And because it's reality, they never think to find a way out. What I'm trying to help you to do is raise your awareness around what is reality so that you can start to create behavioral patterns that work best for you. So I went from thinking about why it won't work to having to find a way because my daughter was worth it. And by continuing to figure things out, it went from why it won't work to I'll figure it out to now I get excited about challenges because I know the challenge is the underbelly of a blessing. And every single challenge reveals a blind spot of mine. And because I'm revealing more blind spots, I'm identifying and becoming more clear on who I am. And what that does? That helps me to align with people that are looking for me. See, there are people that are looking for you right now. Are they looking for ACN? Nope, they're looking for you. And through you, they're going to find the blessing of ACN, but I promise you they're looking for you. How do I know? Because I know people that have seen ACN through other people, but when they saw it through me, they said, you know what? I didn't see it this way. I need to join. So what was the difference maker? They were looking for me. But if I'm not clear on who I am and I'm negative and I don't think things can work and I can't figure things out, then I'm not focused on the things that are necessary. They can't find me. And so you need to get clear on that. First things first, stop making excuses. Take a good, clear assessment of your situation and figure out how ACN will incorporate and will work. How can I figure out ways to insert ACN in the equation in a consistent way? How can I block off time? Where can I block off time in my calendar and my schedule consistently to get the result? Because that's the next part. My mentor taught me repetition is the mother of learning. So if I'm not consistently making effort towards this, I'm not going to get a compounded result. And if I'm not getting a compounded result, it's going to look so small that it's all of a sudden going to start to exhaust me. Because let's face it, if you've ever worked out and you work out hard and you're going through pain and it seems like you're getting this type of a result, can we agree the small result after a lot of work exhausts you more? Because your thought process is, I'm not even getting the results that I need, and I'm putting forth all this effort and it's painful. Maybe I need to quit. So it's the consistent effort, it's the consistent compounded effort that is going to change the behavior patterns, that is going to get you from, I don't think it will work, to I can figure this out. And once you start to figure out things, you get confident around figuring things out, to I get excited about challenges now. Next part, after you get excited about challenges, is to reframe. It's to reframe how you look at life. See, if I was tending to a garden and I got frustrated every single time I saw a weed, then that would mean that I had a misunderstanding of what it means to tend to a garden. But if I realize that the process of tending to a garden means that in seasons, weeds will pop up more than other seasons, but I can identify that there will be weeds that pop up, and that when they do, my tending is to pull the weeds, because my idea is to understand that this is an ongoing situation, then I can be more excited about it or find more peace in the process. See, a lot of you are upset with the process because you have a misconception of what the process is. See, you think that it's supposed to be, I find my big break in a big leader, and now that leader builds for me and it lasts forever, and I don't need to do anything else, and now I can lap on stage and generate the 5-figure incomes and be in the $4 million and $8 million houses because I've made it. There is no destination. See, you get a title. You get a title of RC, RD, RVP, SVP, but there is no I've arrived. It doesn't even work that way in the business. If you understand the business, you have contracted customers that will be around for a period of time where you won't get paid on that residual income after a period of time. You have customers that will leave your business. So if you're not adding new customers on a consistent basis, then you have a small hole at the bottom of your business, and the money is draining out that small hole. And if you're not adding new money into it, then you have a business that's dying. It looks like tending to a garden. So I could get frustrated about the weeds, AKA the things that don't work in my business, AKA the small customers that are leaving out of the bottom of my business, AKA business owners that quit, that say this doesn't work for them, or they go to a different business model because they were attracted to another leader more than they were attracted to me. See, I can get upset with all the weeds, but why would I be focused on the weeds when the purpose is to tend a garden? See, if I look at it as tending to a garden, then I just pull the weeds when they come, and then I stop focusing on the weeds. I'm not focused on the weeds. I eliminate the weeds from the process so I can focus on the garden. See, a lot of you are focused on the weeds, and that's why all you can see is weeds. You got to start focusing on what you can do. I don't know your situation, Jackie. I don't know your situation, Sam. I don't know your situation, David, but what I do know is all of us have situations. And some of us focus on the things we can control and get great at that, and we have great lives. And others point fingers and focus on complaining about the things they can't control, and all they see is weeds in their life, and their reality, their perception becomes their reality. What I'm asking you to do is step out of perception, which is what 80 to 90% of humanity has, and gain perspective. See the alternative. I can tell you, I posted this recently, that I do not have a relationship with my alarm clock anymore. But you may think it's because I can just get up when I'm done sleeping. And yes, that is true. But I get up when I'm done sleeping a lot earlier than all of you. Well, why do I wake up so early? It's because I realized something. When Christmas Eve was around the corner and Santa Claus was on his way, my brother and I could barely sleep that night. In fact, it was so tough that my parents worked in a team effort so that we would not find out who Santa Claus really was. It was sneaky, guys. My dad would take us out to see all of the lights on Christmas Eve. And then my mom would stay home and prep how they were gonna move the presents from their room to the Christmas tree. And we didn't know what was happening. And they would say, you need to stay in your room or Santa is going to pass this house by. We didn't know what that meant. All we knew was that we could not wait to wake up. And we would ask her, my mom and my dad, what is the earliest that it's okay to open presents? To see if Santa came. And that time, we would fight for 6 a.m. and my mom would say, no, 7 a.m. is the earliest. And all I can tell you is from the time we laid our head on the pillow to 7 a.m., it couldn't come fast enough. We were waking up looking at the clock at 4 a.m. We would wake up and look at the clock at 5 a.m. Oh my gosh, it's getting closer. It's getting closer. 6 a.m. Let's just stay up and talk. We can't leave the room. Let's just stay up and talk. 6:55, man, we're ready to run down upstairs. 6:55. Hey, I'm gonna go knock on the door. Mom, Dad, guess what? Santa Claus came. It's time. It's time. Why am I telling you this? Why did I break that all down for you? Because that's how I feel when I wake up in the morning, because it's Christmas Day. So you have to get to a place in your life where you have something that has purpose and value, where you're excited enough to wake up so that you can divorce the alarm clock. And whatever that is right now, it could be where you're going. It could be who you're going to impact. For me, I couldn't wait to get home to my daughter. For me now, it looks like fashioning a life. My daughter's going into, she's going off to college in September. You know what that means? I promise you I'm gonna be traveling just as much as or as more as Mr. Al Thomas. Because I can now. Because I can be everywhere. But it's because I chose to be consistent and self-disciplined for years. And it changed my behavior patterns. It changed my outlook. It got me excited about challenges. And so going back to all of you, Mr. Bob Meyer, going back to you, Douglas Soto, it's been a minute, brother. Going back to you, here's what you have to ask yourself. Look in the mirror. How do I handle? How do I handle things emotionally? Don't tell anyone. You don't have to tell anyone. But Doug, if I looked in the mirror, if you looked in the mirror and said, honestly, when someone gives me bad news, what is my first reaction? Do I get frustrated? Do I get irritated? Do I say, why does this happen to me? I mean, really start to evaluate your own emotional process. Because if that is what's happening first, like I said earlier, I promise you that's a major reason why you're not where you want to be right now. It's not going to change overnight. But if you start to change and start to say, you know what? I realize that every time, look at your life, every time you decide to put your head down and go to work with a challenge, you either learned a whole lot about yourself in a situation, right? And coming out of it, you were equipped with new tools that benefited you moving forward. Is this true with every single challenge that you've embraced in your life? Be honest with yourselves. So if this is the case, then isn't it also true that challenges are blessings when we attack them? Because they always give us more tools for the future. So if that is the case, then challenges are building us. So why do we get frustrated every single time we see an opportunity to grow? Reframe it, reframe it. See it as an opportunity to grow. See it as an opportunity to identify a blind spot. See it as an opportunity to equip yourself with a tool that you'll need later that you don't even know is necessary. Because when we do this weird thing and we pray and we say, God, give me strength, we don't realize that the way that God gives us strength is by putting us in situations where we need to become stronger. And that's painful. When we say, God, make me into the person that can lead an organization, all we're seeing is this big organization in our mind, but we don't see that in order to get there, you need to go through all these trials. We need to go through all these tests so that we can be confident in sharing what we went through when we were there, just like you are now. And be grateful for it. Because every time you can approach a challenge means you woke up this morning and you have breath in your lungs to be able to deserve it, to be able to create a result, to be able to figure something out. And when you start to move into those patterns, then what happens is you start to be grateful for the challenges. And when you become grateful, when you're in gratitude, you open up and every single blessing comes your way. And here's what's so scary. All the blessings that you were looking for are already in the storehouse for you. And you know what? They're all around you. They're all around you, but you can't see them. You can't see them because you're in a perspective of challenge. You're in a perspective of difficulty. You're in a perspective of why me? Why does this happen to me? And when you're in that perspective, those blessings, they look like curses and you can't see them. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in my 43 years of life is that a lot of the things when I was 23 that I thought were curses, disappointments, problems, issues were all blessings. And at 43, I can see it as such. So if I understand that now, and I'm sharing that with you now, that I'm telling you, you can look into the future and realize that when weeds pop up in your garden, it's another lesson that in pulling them will help you to tend that garden and make it more beautiful than it ever was. And I'm talking about the garden of your life. I'm talking about the garden of your business. I'm talking about the garden of your relationships. Man, I love life. I love love, and I love this business. And I know that it all becomes a perspective that allows me to become more attractive to others because they want what they see I have within inside of me. And that's all we're really doing is we're showing people the path to that. And it's hard to do so if it's not in you first. So with that being said, I appreciate each and every single one of you for joining us this morning. You can do this, but it's going to be an assessment of yourself. Okay? No one else can push up the weight for you. You're going to have to do it, and you're going to have to want to. Love you guys.